Yo, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How are we all doing today? I hope you're excited. We're back with another video. Today, we are going to be going over how I do my prep for grading submissions and specifically PSA grading submissions for the upcoming Sport Card Expo in Toronto, Ontario. So I'm going to kind of walk through what cards you should get graded, how much it costs, what you can expect when you go up to the PSA Canada booth at the Sport Card Expo, and how it all works. This video specifically will be for getting your cards graded at the Sport Card Expo next weekend. I can do a separate video on how to submit to PSA over mail from Canada to the US. It can be a little intimidating with packaging everything and whatnot, but I typically, from now on, I'm probably going to just keep submitting through PSA Canada at these Sport Card Expos because you just save a lot on the shipping costs and you don't have to worry about packaging everything up and all that junk. So yeah, let's start off with how the submission works when you get to the Sport Card Expo. If you chose to go with PSA is my favorite grading company just because their cards resell for the most typically. There'll also be Beckett at the expo, as well as companies like KSA. I don't know if MNT is going to be there. I'm assuming they're going to be there, as it is the biggest sport card show in Canada. If this is your first video you're finding of me, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. We're the #1 place on YouTube for beginning hockey card collectors, and I've actually done a lot of videos geared towards beginners already. For example, if you're attending the Sport Card Expo next weekend in November in Toronto, Ontario, go ahead, check out my top 5 card show tips for beginning card collectors. If it's your first ever show, that video could be really helpful and give you some good tips on what to expect when going into this expo, because it can be very overwhelming. So I definitely recommend checking that out. I also do a lot of box openings on the channel, so stick around for that. Leave a like on the video. It really helps me out a lot. It helps me grow the channel. I really appreciate it. And comment down below if you will be attending the Sport Card Expo. I'll be going at least one day. I haven't decided if I'm going to go 2 days. We'll have to wait and see how the first day goes. And yeah, let's get into it. But yeah, when you get to the expo, there'll be a booth. It's usually a pretty big booth for PSA Canada. Now, PSA Canada is actually not PSA. So that's something I didn't know when I first did this. I just figured it was like a division of PSA, but no. PSA Canada is its own separate thing, and they're a company that does submissions to PSA out of Canada. They're actually based out of Nova Scotia. So the way the whole process works is you bring them your cards at a card show. So in this case, the Toronto Sport Card Expo, you fill out their form, or you can fill out it in advance online, which I highly recommend doing. It's what I did last time. I didn't know you could do that. I just kind of did it and it worked out. They can pull it directly from your PSA account, but we'll talk about all that when we get to the whole prep phase. So yeah, you'll go to the booth, you'll give them your cards, you'll fill out a form, or they'll pull your form from online. And then what they'll do is they'll send them off to California, where PSA is based out of. And then whatever your turnaround time is, they'll send them to PSA Canada from California to Nova Scotia. Once the cards get to Nova Scotia, they will then invoice you via email. You won't have to pay anything until they get the cards back in hand at Nova Scotia. Then once you get the invoice, as soon as you pay it, you can do, I think it's e-transfer, or you can phone and pay by credit card. Once you pay that invoice, they will then directly send the cards from Nova Scotia to your location in Canada. And I believe it is overnight shipping, so it only takes 1 or 2 days after they get the cards back in Nova Scotia. So yeah, that's kind of how the whole system works. Now we're going to talk about what cards you should get graded if you've never done grading before. This video is going to be mostly about hockey card. For any card, you want to look at the raw card and then look at the PSA 10 versions to see how much of a price difference it really is. You got to look to see which cards have like the most profit margin pretty much. So for example, it's Cole Caulfield here. I think he's selling for around like $600 Canadian right now. His Young Guns sell for $100. So if you get a Cole Caulfield Young Guns, definitely recommend getting that graded if it's in good condition, that is. Because if your cards come back lower than a 10, you risk losing your money and whatnot. There's 2 reasons to grade cards. The one of them, which is the main reason, is because you want to sell them. You want to get them graded so that people know they're in good condition, and then they usually sell for more money than they would raw. The other reason, which I typically don't do because it costs a lot of money, but Something maybe I do down the line is grade them for your PC, get them in a slab, because these slabs, I love them. They look sick. Then they're well protected. You know what condition they're in. They're never gonna change condition as long as you take care of it. So this will always be a Cole Caulfield PSA 10. It's in my collection. I got it there, so then I know it's good. But it costs a lot of money if you do that a lot, so I typically don't do that. All the cards I get graded, I'm eventually going to sell. But once you decide what cards you want to get graded, whether that's to flip them, you can look at eBay or 130point, I think .com is what the site's called. You can look up prices on there. I use that website a lot. So once you decide which cards you want to get graded, you can then go ahead and start filling out the form online on PSA's website. Or you can wait till you get to the Sport Card Expo. I recommend going early in the day because a line starts to build during the day. Last Sport Card Expo, they only had the economy service open. That's $70 a card. That's what I paid in the last submission. If you saw that, I'll leave a card up to it in the corner. So that was $70 at a max value of $999 a card. But now the value service is open up, which is a lot cheaper. It's about $42 Canadian a card. I'll throw up an image of the prices now.
So, like I said, the economy level service was the lowest service available at the last Sport Card Expo, but now, luckily, the value level service has opened up at $42 a card, max value of $500, which is okay for what I'm going to be submitting. The guy told me last time with my Ovechkin, because it was over that $1,000 max value on the economy service, to just mark it as economy and see if they upcharge me. They did upcharge me, so you can do that with a value order. Just mark it down as the max value, see if they upcharge you, but just know there may be a delay, as my shipment was delayed by about a month and a half. So yeah, maybe don't do that if you want your cards back at a certain time, but you could also get away with not having to pay extra for that one card. So now here's a picture of what the PSA Canada submission form will look like if you fill out the form at the expo. I'm going to leave a link in the description to the PSA Online Submission Center where you can fill out your information in advance. The form is pretty straightforward. You just use the example line as an example. So quantity, 1 year, whatever, SP Authentic product, the card number, the player, the declared value of the card, and then your service level, as well as if it's an autograph grade or not, just yes or no. Pretty straightforward stuff. If you have any questions on the form or pricing, please let me know down in the comments and I will go ahead and respond.
Okay, so now that we've discussed the pricing and the form, we're going to go over things you need to prep your cards before taking them to the show. Now, for this example, I'm going to be using this Cole Perfetti Young Guns. I don't think I'm going to get this graded. I don't know. I still haven't looked into the pricing of these yet. But yeah, for the example, I'm going to use the Cole Perfetti Young Guns. So the first thing we're going to need is, of course, the card. We're going to need some fresh sleeves. Any sleeve would work. I have 2 sheets of paper towel here stacked together. That's usually just something I use to put it on. This here is a microfiber cloth that you can use to wipe down the card. You can find this in like any glasses case. They're used to clean like sunglasses or like your eyeglasses, something like that. It's really soft. Just be careful when you're using these. You don't want to use them around the corners and stuff like that. But if there's any like stuff on the surface, you can use this to get it off. These 2 things you don't need, but are very helpful. This here is just a magnifying glass. So if you just pull it out like this, it's got a little light on there. It gets you a better look. You can see my little ring light on my camera there. So yeah, you can get a closer look, really look for those surface issues. And then these are card saver ones. So this is what we're going to end up putting the cards in at the end. We're not going to put it into a new top loader. We're going to put them into these card saver ones. So then the way these work, I'll pull one out. The way these work is they're little like sleeves, and they just go in like that. You just hold your 2 fingers like that, slide the card right in, so then it's easy for the graders to pull them out and actually get at the card. Now, when you're going to the Sport Card Expo, you do not need to put your cards in these card savers. I do it to save time, but if you're submitting to PSA over mail, they do say on their website to put them in these savers so they can easily grab them, or it may add to your grading time. But at the Sport Card Expo, last time at least, they supplied them. So if you did bring your cards in top loaders, they would just take them out and put them into these card savers. I have some on hand, so to save time, I'm probably going to do it myself. These can be quite expensive. They're kind of hard to find. I think they're like $30, $40. maybe they're cheaper now, but I bought these a long time ago during COVID and stuff, so everything was expensive back then. So yeah, definitely don't have to for the expo. I wouldn't recommend it. It's just what I'm going to be doing today. Okay, so let's get started with the prep. So when I prep my cards, I want to aim for 10s. Anything with any issues I find, I usually won't grade. This time around, I'm probably going to end up sending about 20 cards in, around $42 a card. So it should actually work out to about the same price I paid for my last submission. And of course, on the last submission, I only submitted 10 cards, and this time I'm submitting 20. So yeah, we'll see. So what you want to do, very first thing, take the card out. You want to be careful. Get out of its sleeve. And then you just want to place it on the paper towel. So PSA and most grading companies have 4 categories they use to base off what grade your card gets. So the 4 categories are the centering, the surface, the corners, and the edges of your cards. And I'm going to try and provide you guys with some example of bad corners, edges, and surface issues. I'll try and find some cards in my collection that have some, so you know what to look for, because it is pretty minuscule at times. First one I'm going to show, centering. Centering on hockey cards for the most part is pretty good. Young Guns are usually centered very well because they don't have a ton of borders. For example, is Jason Robertson. It's not off-centered really at all, top to bottom, left to right. But a card that is very badly off-center is this card I purchased, and I think it's like the only reason it's got such a low grade. You can tell right away just looking at it, it's off-centered right to it's off-centered to the right. There's just a lot more room along this left side than there is the right side. Like, you can just visually see that. It's just a good example, and it's a little off-centered up and down, but not nearly as much as right to left. And you want to check the back as well. It's bad for these Panini cards because they have a lot of borders. OPC Platinum hockey cards are also bad for centering, as they have a lot of like borders like this. But for the most part, Young Guns have like pictures, so for the most part they're pretty well centered. I typically on Young Guns don't really, I check the centering, but I'm not too nitpicky over it. So now for corners, we're going to look at this card I screwed up on. This was in my first ever PSA submission, this Anze Kopitar Young Guns. So looking at the front, looks pretty good. There is a weak corner up there, you can see a little bit, but that's not what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you guys why you always check the back of your cards, because I didn't for my first submission. If you look at the back, look at that bottom right corner, you can see it, bunch of white there, bunch of white there. Not good corners. You want to make sure your corners are sharp, like the bottom right one here. You want to make sure it's sharp, like the Cole Perfetti card we showed off earlier. You want to make sure your corners are sharp. You want to check the front and the back. So that's what corner damage looks like. Stuff like this on the Capris, obviously, it's hard to see, but in the top right there, see how that corner's rounded and there's a little bit of white showing. Not great there. So another thing to check for, I don't really have an example on hand for surface issue, but I'm going to throw up a picture now of the Hobby Box video I made where I got all those Young Guns with surface issues. So this is the Maurice Sider I pulled out of my Hobby Box in that one video where all the Young Guns are damaged. And if you look at his left, well, our left shoulder, his right shoulder, you can see that scratch running right through the coach's jacket there. There's also another scratch further down. So yeah, just check for any scratches or smudges or stuff you could wipe off the surface when evaluating your cards. The last category is edges. Now, Series 1 for 2022 especially has a lot of cards with bad edges. And this Trevor Zegras is a card I would not get graded. You can kind of see it already, but look at that top edge. Do you see all that white there? There's an awful edge on that Trevor Zegras. It kind of stops at about the middle of the card, but that is a terrible edge. And if you look at the back, you can just see it. You see all that chipping on the edges? That's what you want to look for. You want to make sure your card doesn't have any of that chipping. You can get away with a little bit, but even this bottom right corner, not in great condition. So this is a card I wouldn't get graded because of all those issues. You can get away with a little bit of chipping on this Cole Caulfield PSA 10 Young Guns. You can see on that back right corner, there is a tiny bit of chipping,
But if you look in even on that edge there, they take that into account that these cards, the Series 1 2022 Young Guns, they had very bad quality control. Like I've seen PSA 10 Cole Caulfields in worse condition than this one. That's why I sent it in. And I'm actually thinking about sending another one in. We'll see though. So yeah, those are the 4 categories to kind of look for and examples on how to spot these issues. It can be very tricky. I'm still not very great at it. The surface stuff, that's the reason I bought the magnifier, because it's very hard to spot unless you use something like this. So definitely recommend picking this up if you're going to be submitting a lot. But if you're not, then maybe don't worry about it, because it is like $30 and it starts to add up quick. This is like $30, $20. I don't remember how much it cost. And then for the grading fees, you have to pay for the shipping. You have to pay the tax, you have to pay for the supplies, and yeah, it can be very expensive. So only if you're going to end up submitting a lot, I'd recommend picking one of these up. The first thing I do now it's on the paper towel, I pick it up, being very careful. Some people wear gloves, I don't. So the first thing I do, I look over the card with my eyes. So on this one specifically, it might be hard to pick up on camera. I see a little edge wear at the top. I'll try and get... You see that right there? I'm pointing at it. A tiny, tiny bit of edge wear. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Along the edges and the corners look okay. The top left corner looks okay. There's a tiny bit of white. We'll have to use my magnifier there to see if that's part of the card or not. And then this is another thing you always want to check the back of your cards. The corners on the back look good and the surface looks good. The edges on the back, that top edge, same on the front, a little ding there. But yeah, just by my eye evaluation, I think this could get a 10. But let's take our magnifier here and go over this and see if I can spot anything else. So we got our magnifier out. Let's take a look here. So right now I'm looking at the top left corner, and there does look like there's a little white on that top left corner. And there's also something on the surface there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, grab my microfiber cloth, and you're just going to take it and gently wipe. See if it comes off. You don't want to be too aggressive. There we go. Got that little piece of gunk off there. There's another one there in the middle. I'm not sure if they wipe down the cards for you before they grade them, so I always like to do this just in case. So just like dust particles and whatnot you want to look for. So yeah, a little bit of edge wear. I also got this from Amazon, by the way. Just look up magnifier on Amazon. Should be able to find it pretty easy. So yeah, the front of the card looks good surface-wise. Check out the back now. Some more gunk on the back. Take our cloth again. There we go. We got that off. Perfect. And there we go. I think the back looks pretty good on this. So I think this card has a chance at a 10. The only issues I see with it, there's a tiny, tiny bit of white speck on the corner, and I think there's some edge wear along the top and along the back of the card here. I think it has a chance at a 10, but you never know. It could come back a 9. I would definitely send this if it was a card I wanted to get graded. So let's show you how I put it into the card saver now. So now I would take a fresh sleeve, put it into a fresh sleeve here. So there we go. It's in the sleeve. And grab our card saver
And you want to be really careful when putting these in. Make sure it's nice and wide. So you can slide your card right in. And then once it gets to a certain point, you can let go. There we go. And then try not to force it down, but you might have to. It also doesn't have to be centered. It bugs me when they're not centered, but they don't really care as long as they can get at the cards. So there, now it's all secure in there. It won't move around or anything as long as you have it in like a case or something, or like safely put away. It's all set to grade. Yeah. So obviously you don't have to have these card savers, but if you are sending them by mail, they do say that you should submit with these. So yeah, definitely recommend picking them up if you are going to mail them in, but don't have to. You can use top loaders if you're going to the expo. Yeah, now that you have your card all prepped and ready to go, you can go ahead, add it to your form, either online or that form I threw up on screen. So then once you get to the booth at the expo, it's quick and easy. They can just pull your form from online, or you can fill it out there. And yeah, guys, that is how I prep my cards. Hope you guys enjoyed my PSA grading prep for the expo. Let me know if you want to see me do this for a mail submission. I don't intend on mailing cards, so I could just package it up, like pretend package it up, kind of like I did for this Colt Perfetti Young Guns, and kind of the form would be the same if you did it online. Maybe I'll leave a link in the description for the form so you can fill it out. You just have to create a PSA account, and then they can pull it right from your PSA account if you have a form saved on there already. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you saw here and want to stick around, please consider subscribing. I really appreciate it. Drop a like on the video. It really helps me out and helps me grow the channel. And leave a comment down below if you have any questions at all. I will try. I probably will respond to every single comment there is. So if you have any concerns or questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll try my best to answer as quickly as possible. And I look forward to having another fun Sport Card Expo. It looks like it's going to be the biggest they've ever had. It looks like it's in all 5 halls. So hopefully that will be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going, and thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.